Welcome to Naptime Sports Talk Podcast. We are two dads talking sports during nap times. Thank you for tuning in to the latest episode. Welcome back to Naptime Sports Talk Podcast. For episode 5, we will start with the latest news on the Minnesota Wild, Minnesota Timberwolves, and Minnesota Twins. We will then dive into the NFL Scouting Combine and share 3 players who may light up the Combine and see their stock rise. We will then each share our top 5 NFL draft quarterback prospects. To wrap up the show, we'll discuss our thoughts on the long-awaited NCAA football video game, which is set to release in July. Enjoy the show. So, Zach, anything you'd like to say before we just jump into the Minnesota sports recap?
No, let's jump right in. I think I just want to say thanks. I mean, we're already on episode 5 here, so I mean, we're cooking now, and this has been a lot of fun. But yeah, let's just jump right into the Minnesota recap.
All right, yeah, sounds good. So starting off, the Minnesota Wild. So over the past 7 games, the Wild have managed to pick up 11 total points in the standings. They're 5-1-1 since the All-Star break, and as of now, are sitting 2 points back from the second wildcard spot, which is being held currently by the St. Louis Blues. So they're getting hot at the right time, and they're in a good spot for a playoff push with 26 games left on the season.
Awesome.
The trade deadline is coming up on March 8th, so we'll see what they do. I don't expect them to be very active at the deadline, but you just never know with Billy G.
Sure.
Yeah, and I just kind of want to jump into, the other night on President's Day, the Wild had a huge game. They played let me go back. They lost Tuesday night versus the Winnipeg Jets 6-3, but I wanted to touch base on the President's game. So the Wild played the Vancouver Canucks, who are currently ranked number 1 in the NHL points-wise. Vancouver is also considered one of the better defensive teams in the NHL. And in that game, the Wild managed to score 10 goals,
Jeez.
2 of them being empty netters. That was goal 9 and goal number 10. And they ended up winning the game 10-7. So during the game, the Wild were down 5-2 late in the second period, and Matt Zuccarello scored a late goal with less than about a minute left in the second period. And then at the start of the third, the Wild managed to score a total of 5 goals. So they scored about roughly 6 goals in 6 minutes or so from late in the second to early in the third period. And I've never seen anything like that before. It's just goal after goal after goal. And the game ended up being the highest scoring game in Wild history. So it was a very exciting game, a lot of good offense. And like I said before,
It's a football score.
Yeah, exactly. 10-7. You look at that and they scored more games. They had more points than the Raiders and Vikings game, which was at 3 this season. So just put that in a little perspective. But
a bad night for the goalies.
Yeah, no kidding. But in that game, Eriksson Ek and Kaprizov both ended up with hat tricks and 6 points each. So, they're starting to cook a little bit right now, and they're making a good push for the playoffs. So they could see some guys coming here too. Top prospect, Marat Kuzdovin. He was a draft pick in 2020, 37th overall, and he may be signing here after his season is done in the KHL, so he might be coming up here in sometime in March. So getting excited, or I'm looking forward to that and getting excited for him.
Nice, that's awesome.
Yeah, so Zach, what's going on with the Minnesota Timberwolves?
All right, so the Timberwolves, we just had the All-Star break this past weekend. The East beat the West 211-186. It's the highest scoring All-Star game in NBA history. Towns led all players with 58 points and 8 boards.
Wow.
But unfortunately, the West lost. So Damian Lillard won MVP. And Lillard also won the 3-point contest this past weekend. Mac McClung won the dunk contest. And I watched it. And man, honestly, that was a tough watch. The judges were absolutely brutal. God, it was just tough to watch. Even the All-Star game in itself was just overall, very tough watch. I don't know what they're going to do. I know this year they went back to the East versus West format instead of having like the 2 player captains, and I don't know what they're going to do, but they're going to have to figure something out. But since then, Mike Conley agreed to a 2-year extension with the Timberwolves. He's 36 years old, but they got him for 2 years, 22 mil, which I think is a overall pretty team friendly deal. And ever since they got Mike Conley, I mean, Rudy Gobert has really taken his game to an entirely different level. So, and that's the main reason why the Wolves have the second best record in the NBA and the first best record in the West. They have a game and a half lead over the Thunder going into the second half of the season. So right now the Timberwolves are sitting super, super nice. And another thing that's playing in their favor is starting this upcoming weekend. They have back-to-back home games against the Bucks and Nets, but they actually have a 7-game home stretch to start the second half of the season, and I believe they have the second easiest schedule the rest of the way out. So, I mean, if the Timberwolves can keep their foot on the pedal, I don't see how they're not the number 1 or number 2 seed in the West when it's all said and done. So, big year for the Wolves. And I really hope that this is the year they can at least win a playoff series. It's been 20 years, so it's a good year to be a Wolves fan.
Yeah, hopefully they, like you said, hopefully they make a good playoff run here because the Wolves fans have been waiting for a long time and seems like they have the guns to do it this year. So looking forward to the playoffs coming up.
Oh, exactly, for sure. But how about the Twins? I know spring training is all the players have reported and stuff, but what's new on the Twin side?
Yeah, so nothing too much other than just, like you said, spring training started. They actually start here this weekend on Friday. They play the Gophers, the Minnesota Gophers, which is kind of interesting. They kind of do that every year. I'm not
Yeah,
sure.
that's
I'm
awesome.
not sure if, like the top guys are going to be playing in that, but I would imagine some of their prospects that they invited to camp would be playing versus the Gophers. And then the next day on Saturday, they actually start playing versus the Pittsburgh Pirates. So I would expect some guys,
Oh, nice,
get some
nice.
time during that. And then, yeah, just exciting times around the Twins, seeing if they can continue to build off last year. And one report out of camp so far is that Buxton has been flying around in practice. So I'm really hoping
Good.
that he can stay healthy this year and get back to form. And then Chris Paddock also, coming off Tommy John injury or surgery last
Yep.
season. He really had a great postseason coming out of the bullpen. So I know the
Sure.
Twins are kind of looking forward for him to be back in that starting mix, and they're kind of banking on that too. I'm kind of wondering if they'll still maybe make some type of move to bring in another position player or pitcher. Because last year around this time, I think they brought in Donovan Solano, and he really helped us out last year. So, yeah, I'm kind of thinking or wondering if they'll bring another guy. I had heard reports too that Michael Taylor, who is still available and was on our team last year, they might be looking to bring him back. So I'd like that. I think that would add insurance to the center field position. He's a great defensive player, and last year's bat was pretty impressive too. He
Sure.
only hit 220 average, but he had 21 homers and 51 RBIs. So he really came in and kind of surprised a lot of people with this hot bat.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I'm really surprised that, baseball is right around the corner and we got guys like Blake Snell
Mhm.
and Cody Bellinger, JD Martinez, just to name a couple guys off the top of my head that are still free agents.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just kind of weird how MLB free agency works. So, yeah, I could definitely see the Twins, bringing in another arm.
Yeah, I wonder where Blake Snell is going to land, and he would be an awesome guy to add to that rotation. I don't know if we have the dollar amount to do it, but he would be he'd be a really nice pick. Do you think there's any chance he ends up with the Padres? You're a big Padre fan.
Yeah, I don't think so. I just think that they kind of overspent the last couple years.
Okay.
So obviously they let guys like Josh Hader go and Blake Snell and traded Soto away too.
Yeah.
The last thing that I kind of saw on Blake Snell was the Yankees were still pretty interested in him. So if I had to guess, he'll probably end up in the pinstripes. I mean, I hope that I'm wrong because they just got guys like I said, Soto and whatnot. So I wouldn't like to see that, but I could definitely, within the next couple days, maybe before this podcast even drops, Blake Snell
Yeah.
being a New York Yankee.
Yeah, and I saw, man, if they could add him to that Yankees rotation with having Soto they added, and you have Judge in the corner and Stanton. I don't know if you've seen this lately, but look him up. He's lost a ton of weight. Looks like just a total different person, probably the best shape that he's been in. So if he can produce and stay healthy this year, watch out for the Yankees because they're gonna be pretty tough to beat.
Yeah, for sure. I really like their team. I mean, they even went out and got guys like Alex Verdugo, which from the Red Sox, who I really like.
Mhm.
They went out and got Marcus Stroman, who struggled a little bit last year, but obviously, he has the potential to be one of those top guys. So on paper, the Yankees look like just a powerhouse. So hopefully they don't play as good as a lot of people think they will, but I mean, it's going to
Yeah.
be hard not to see the Yankees going deep in the playoffs this year.
Yeah, for sure. If I had an early prediction, I think it might be the Yankees in the AL, and then uh, I hate to say it, Zach, but the Dodgers in the NL just with the
I
moves they
know.
made. So we could have a whole nother podcast about the Ohtani
Yes,
signing and how
absolutely.
ridiculous that is for baseball. But
Yeah.
yeah, we'll save that for
I
another
I
time.
Yeah, dude, for sure. But I agree with you. On paper, it looks like Yankees and Dodgers. Hopefully that's not going to be the case, but it's tough to argue against that for sure.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so yeah, I don't know if you want to start this one next topic off, you want me to start off. Maybe we can just alternate, like you say a guy, I say a guy, and then
Yeah,
we'll
let's
just
do
kind of do
that.
that.
Let's go
So
back and forth.
yeah, yeah. So three players. We're gonna go on the next topic. Three players who could light up the combine. And just before I start, the combine starts here on February 25th and ends on March 4th. So we'll see on-field workouts at different times for different positions. On Thursday, February 29th, we'll see the defensive line and linebackers. That also includes, edge rushers, things like that. And then on Friday, March 1st, we'll see the DBs and tight ends have their on-field workouts. And my favorite time to watch is going to be on Saturday, March 2nd, and that's when the running backs, quarterbacks, and wide receivers all go. And then after that, March 3rd on Sunday, finishing up the combine, you'll have the offensive line and then specialists do their on field workouts. So that includes punters, kickers, and long snappers.
Yeah, I can't wait for that, man. Like off season's full swing ahead now, and with all the NFL draft stuff coming up, I mean, this is my favorite
Yeah,
time of
same
the
here.
year for sure.
We can really dive deep into a lot of the prospects, and you just you just never know at the draft who's gonna rise up, and you just see their stock shoot up over these next few months. So well, yeah, just kind of leading
Yeah,
into
without a
that, I
doubt.
guess here's our three players who we think that could, light up the combine and see their stock rise heading into April. So, yeah, Zach, why don't you
Yep.
go? Who is your first player?
All right, so the number one player that came across my mind was Chop Robinson, pass rusher from Penn State. I just think in this draft class, there isn't a clear cut number one pass rusher. Obviously, you have a guy like Latu from UCLA. You got Jared Verse from Florida State. You have Dallas Turner
Hmm.
from Alabama. But I think Chop Robinson is more athletic than all of those guys. And I think come combine time, he's absolutely going to light it up. And I think his draft stock is going to freaking skyrocket. I mean, if I had to guess, I think he's a mid 4'4" guy. I saw a video of him benching 400 pounds, so he's
Jeez.
just an athletic freak. And yeah, I mean, his production numbers really
Hmm.
aren't there. He's had 9.5 sacks in the last
Yeah.
2 years, which obviously isn't anything to really brag about. But I don't want to compare him to this guy. But obviously, Micah Parsons played at Penn State, and just the athleticism. I'm not talking about the player to player, just strictly athleticism. I mean, Chop Robinson just looks the part. And I think that when it's all said and done, I would not be surprised if he's a top
Okay.
15 pick.
Yeah, because right now he's probably more considered a late first, early second, maybe mid second, I would say,
Early second.
So,
Yep, absolutely,
um,
absolutely.
yeah, that's a heck of a guy to watch out for. And, just going back to how he said he didn't have that many sacks in college, I kind of think of a guy like Daniil Hunter coming out of college. He obviously went in round three, I believe, and he had very little sacks, but they took a chance on his, athleticism and his kind of physical build, and he really kind of developed over time. So Chop Robinson could definitely be a guy that kind of fits that similar mold.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think he has the fastest first step in out of this
Okay.
entire draft. So, I mean, obviously he's a little more raw. He's definitely a project, but if the right team can get their hands on him and coach him up and add some more pass rushing tools to his arsenal, I think he's going to be an absolute force at the next level.
Yeah, so I guess
Yeah.
my guy, when I was doing this, I was kind of thinking of guys that aren't really considered in that like echelon of maybe making it to the first round. So I kind of looked at guys that could maybe move up a couple rounds from maybe like the third to second or fourth to third, things like that.
Yeah. I like that.
So, but my number one guy
Yeah.
I'm
I like
keeping an
that.
eye on at the combine is Bucky Irving, running back from Oregon. He's 5'10", 195 pounds. This past season, he rushed for 1,180 yards, and his rushing yard average was 6.3. He scored 13 total touchdowns, 11 were rushing and 2 were passing. He's definitely a dual threat back who can catch out of the backfield as well. This past season, he had 56 receptions and 413 receiving yards. So he has that dual threat ability, and you kind of watch him on tape, and he's definitely a good playmaker too, and can kind of go for 6 at any point in a game. I think he would maybe run in the low 4.4 range. Um, but I think teams are gonna really love to watch how he kind of moves on the field and his on-field workouts, and they're just kind of gonna fall in love with that cast catching ability and overall just explosiveness as well. So, at the end of the day, I think he'll maybe move up and go anywhere day 2, maybe in the third round as of now. But I think we could see his stock rise as the draft comes.
Yeah, for sure. And I like him a lot too. He's a guy that, I mean, he started his career, he actually committed to the Gophers. I
Yep.
mean, his freshman year was in Minnesota, which was really cool. Then ended up
Mm-hmm.
transferring to Oregon. But that's another thing with this draft class. There isn't a clear cut number one running back. So it's like, do you want the big power back like a Braylon Allen? Do you want, kind of like a do it all guy like a Jonathan Brooks from Texas, or a Bucky Irving too? I mean, it's going to be really interesting to see how this running back class kind of plays out.
And he did well his freshman year at the Gophers too, so he's been pretty consistent throughout his whole college career.
Yeah, for sure. He's got a 6.2 career rushing average. So I mean,
Yeah,
he's
yeah,
pretty
for
legit.
sure. All right, well, who is your number 2 guy?
So my number two guy is another guy that's right now, borderline first round. Uh, right now, probably early second round guy. If I had to guess. But Xavier Leggett, I kind of talked to him a little bit in the previous podcast, but I'm just a big fan of his game. This is another he's going to be a combine freak. He's 6'3", 230 pounds. He's almost identical to DK Metcalf, just the build, the size. He's got the same exact frame as him. Now, DK was a second round pick, but I think Xavier Leggett in this wide receiver class can slip, himself into that first round. So last year with Spencer Rattler as his quarterback, he put up 1,200 yards, 7 touchdowns. So nothing too crazy, but I've been hearing reports that Xavier Leggett could run a 4.2, which would be crazy with him being 6'3",
Yeah, that'd be
230
nuts.
pounds.
Definitely have to keep an eye out for that, and I'll definitely be tuning in when he is running. That's for sure.
Yeah, I cannot wait to see him run and just work out. I mean, he's going to be a guy that can really hurt or help his case come combine time.
Yeah, it's a solid player, and just a guy that everyone should really watch out for, because I think you're right. He could move himself up into the maybe late first round, maybe in the early 20s too, depending on how he really does during this draft season.
Oh, dude, for sure, for sure.
All right, well, yeah, kind of moving on to my second player. So my second player is Brendan Rice out of USC. So he is, that last name might sound familiar, and he's actually the son of one of the best wide receivers of all time, and that is Jerry Rice. So Brendan is 6'2", 212 pounds, so he's a pretty, he's a bigger receiver. This past year, he had a pretty nice statistical year and ended the season with 45 receptions, 791 yards, and 12 touchdowns. So he's definitely a good player in that red zone. And most impressively, his average yards per catch was at 17.6 this past season. I know in college that stat may be a little higher in comparison to the NFL, but still, that's an impressive mark. So yeah, Brendan Rice, he has great length as a wide receiver, and one thing that I've noticed just watching him is he can just kind of out dog guys on those 50-50 balls. He's a pretty natural hands catcher as well, and he likes to high point the football. So, that's something that, not saying he's going to live up to this type of player, but Justin Jefferson is a player who comes in mind who also likes to high point that ball. So he has that similar trait.
Yeah, for sure. And the thing that was crazy about him is obviously I try to watch as many Caleb Williams games as I
Hmm.
possibly could, this past year or two. And every single game, Rice just stood out. He was definitely their best wide receiver that they had. And, if you put him in the right system, I think he's going to be an absolute dog at the next level. Him and Zachariah Branch at USC were both so much fun to
Yeah,
watch with
for
Caleb
sure.
Williams.
I think one concern that he might have is just kind of being consistent when playing through contact on contested routes. I've seen him sometimes kind of get bounced off his route a little bit.
Sure.
Overall,
Yeah.
he's an he's 6'2", like I said, and he's probably gonna run in the 4.3 range, I would imagine. He might run, I think, high 4.3, low 4.4. So we'll see what he does at the combine, but I think this is a guy that could maybe end up somewhere in, late second round, early third round, or somewhere in the third round, and really end up being a steal for a team.
Yeah, I think a team's gonna fall in love with him. And obviously, when your dad's Jerry Rice, you're obviously just a route technician, and that's exactly what he was, or what he is. He kind of displayed that at the
For
Senior
sure.
Bowl. So, I mean, whoever ends up taking him is gonna get an absolute dog. So, moving on, number 3 on my list. So, in this draft class, there isn't a clear cut number one middle linebacker. You got guys like Jeremiah Trotter Jr., which I loved his dad in the NFL, so it's really cool that his son will be playing at the next level. You got a guy like Javon Solomon from Troy, Peyton Wilson from NC State. But my favorite linebacker in this entire draft, and I think could be a day two, or I think he should be a second round pick is Edgerrin Cooper, linebacker out of
Okay.
Texas A&M. Very athletic, sideline to sideline linebacker. Exactly the kind of linebacker that fits today's NFL. If I had to guess 40 wise, he's probably going to be a mid 4.4 guy, which is plenty fast at the next level, especially at linebacker. Last year he had 17 TFLs, 8 sacks, and 84 total tackles. So he really put up the numbers too. First team all
Yeah.
AC SC or SCC, and then he's 6'3", 235 pounds. So he's got a good frame too to play linebacker at the next level. So his game kind of honestly reminds me of Patrick Queen, who I talked about in previous podcasts too, who I really like. So I think he'll be the number one linebacker taken off the board, and I expect his name to be called somewhere uh, mid second round to late second round. I think he's gonna be a second round pick.
Okay. Yeah, I'll have to check him out. I don't know too much about that player, but he sounds very enticing, very exciting. Do you think, would you pretty happy with that pick if the Raiders took him?
Yeah, for sure, especially in the second round. I mean, obviously the Raiders would have an earlier second round pick. So it might be a little early. They got a guy like Robert Spillane who's a very good middle linebacker. The Raiders have, struggled in years past finding that middle
Hmm.
linebacker position. But with Robert Spillane, they kind of found that. But the thing with Patrick Graham, our defensive coordinator, is he likes to run some 4-3 fronts, but then he likes to run a lot of 3-4
Okay.
fronts too. So obviously in the 3-4, you got more linebackers on the field. So yeah, I would definitely be happy with a guy like Edgerrin Cooper in the second round. And another guy that I would really like if we brought in free agency wise is Patrick McQueen, who I kind of compare these two
Hmm.
players with. So I do think middle linebacker is a need for us. I do think we need a guy next to Robert Spillane. So a pick in the second round would be nice. I'd be happy with that.
Yeah, for sure. And like you said, we'll see if Patrick Queen ends up, you know, going in the free agency, which he probably is most likely going to do. And I think he would be a really good fit, as we talked about in previous episodes. He was on your list there.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I like him a
Yeah,
lot.
moving on. So my third player, people might not have heard of this guy or have heard of this guy before, but if you haven't, make sure you check him out because man, he is impressive, and that is Jalen Wright, running back out of University of Tennessee. So he is 5'11", 210. This past season, he had 137 carries for 1,013 rushing yards and 4 touchdowns. So the touchdown production wasn't there, but his yards per carry was 7.4.
Yeah,
And you
it's
go watch him,
insane.
man, and he is explosive. He's definitely could end up being like a workhorse type back. He's a very physical runner, and he also has that breakaway speed in open field. So I've seen him, one cut, go through a hole, have that patience, and then take off for six, man. So he's a guy to go check out. And, he made Bruce Feldman's freak list and was ranked at 24. So Bruce Feldman always has that list that comes out, and he's usually pretty right on about these guys. So I think he'll probably run in the 4.3 range at the combine. So he's got that burst and he's got that speed. Right now, he's more projected as a day 3 guy, but I think he could maybe see his stock rise up to day 2. And I would love if the Vikings could find a way to add him to the roster. Obviously, right now we don't have a 3rd-round pick, but man, if he would to go in that 4th round, that's a guy that I would take no matter what. And one thing I think the teams are going to love about him is he's probably the best pass blocking halfback in this draft as well.
Yeah, that would be huge for the Vikings. Like you said, they have to find the running back one this offseason, either, paying a guy, it's a good free agency class for running backs, or going out and drafting a guy. And drafting a guy like this would be huge. I think he's the fastest running back in this entire draft class. Definitely the most explosiveness, one cut and take it to the house. And I saw something that, he might run a 4.2.
A
So, I mean, if he
4.2.
runs a 4.2, yeah, if he runs a 4.2, like some people are saying, I mean, his draft
Yeah.
stock is going to skyrocket. So that's a great pick.
Yeah, and I think he's gonna run that low 4.3, but man, you never know if these guys, when they put in that work in the after college and or after the college season, and they can kind of make that or make those numbers go up just based on the work they put into it.
Yeah, he's going to be definitely an exciting player to watch during the combine for sure.
Yeah, so moving on, that wraps up our 3 players. My 3 were again Bucky Irving, running back out of Oregon, Brendan Rice, wide receiver out of USC, and Jalen Wright, halfback out of University of Tennessee.
Yep, and mine were Chop Robinson, defensive end out of Penn State, Xavier Leggett, wide receiver out of South Carolina, and Edgerrin Cooper, linebacker out of Texas A&M. So make sure to keep an eye on those 6 players, because I think all 6 are going to light up the combine.
Well, yeah, moving on now. So Zach, we have now we're gonna rank our top 5 quarterbacks from this draft. So maybe we can just I'll go, you go, just do that kind of thing again.
Yeah, let's do that, because I think it'll be pretty similar.
Yeah, I think so too. We'll probably have maybe one guy different on
Yeah.
this list,
Yep.
but I think the top 4, top 5, or not top 5, but top 3 will be the same in some type of order. So
Yep, absolutely. So who's your number 1?
yeah, my number 1 is Caleb Williams out of USC. He has the best arm talent in this draft. He's probably the most kind of hyped prospect or quarterback prospect, I would say maybe since Trevor Lawrence. So,
Yeah.
I think it would be hard not to rank him number 1 over the other guys, even though I think some of those other guys may be a little close, but I feel he's still a mile ahead of them.
Yeah, I totally agree with that too. I mean, obviously this is kind of bold, but Caleb Williams is the best college quarterback that I've ever seen. I thought, watching Andrew Luck at Stanford, I thought no one's ever gonna, in my book, pass Andrew Luck. Guys like Trevor Lawrence and those guys didn't pass Andrew Luck, but Caleb Williams did. I mean, in my opinion, he's just a faster Mahomes. He looks just like Patrick Mahomes on the field. They're like the same size. Like I said, Caleb is a little faster, but the arm strength is similar. The way that just the accuracy outside of the pocket are almost spot on. So I mean, if you're the Bears, you have to stay put at 1 and you have to take him, because he's the best quarterback we've seen in a long time.
Yeah, for sure. And they'd be pretty crazy actually not to pick him at number 1.
Oh, for sure, definitely. Still only 22 years old, one of the younger quarterbacks in the draft. The last 2 seasons, 72 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, and this year he completed 68% of his passes, and that's pretty impressive because he's one of the quarterbacks that really likes to push the ball down the field. So he's very impressive.
Yeah, definitely. Who is your? You can go on this one. Who is your number 2 guy?
So my number 2, we might have a different number 2 here, but my number 2 is Jaden Daniels,
Okay.
quarterback from LSU. I've seen a lot of comparisons to Lamar Jackson, and the more I really thought about it, he reminds me of Randall Cunningham.
Okay.
So, Randall Cunningham came out and said that he ran a 4.29 on a rubber track, which I don't know if he actually did. When just watching Cunningham, he looks more like a 4.4 guy.
Yeah.
But Jaden's going to be faster than that. I think Jaden, maybe he's low 4.4s, but I think he's going to be 4.3 when it's all said and done. But he's a fluid thrower like Cunningham was. Obviously,
Mhm.
won the Heisman this past year, and in my opinion, the most impressive stats, more than all the yardage that he threw and all the rushing yards that he had. With passes that traveled over 20 yards, he
Mhm.
had 22 touchdowns and 0 interceptions this past season. So he's another guy that likes to push the ball down the field. Obviously, he had receivers like Brian Thomas Jr., who's an absolute stud. He's going to be a first round pick, and then Malik Neighbors too, who's probably going to be a top 5 pick. So yes, he did have weapons, but Jaden Daniels looks the part, and he reminds me a lot of Randall Cunningham.
Yeah, and I knew he had a really good year rushing, but I went
Hmm.
back and just looked at his stats for rushing, and he rushed over 1,000 yards, which I don't even know who's the last quarterback in college who's thrown for that money or for that many yards and rushed for that many yards. So he's definitely probably the best dual threat quarterback maybe since Lamar Jackson, and even Lamar Jackson wasn't considered this high of a thrower when he came out because people are saying, you should just stick to running back and things like that. So he's definitely, I would say, a higher prospect at
Yeah.
this point of his career than Lamar Jackson was, and that's pretty scary because we can see how he developed.
Yeah, for sure. I remember a lot of teams during the combine and stuff actually wanted Lamar Jackson to move to receiver, and he kind of stuck to his guns and stayed at quarterback. And obviously, it worked out really well for him.
Yeah,
But yeah, Jaden Daniels, I mean, he's definitely going to be a top 5 pick. I don't see how he's not. And yeah, he had 10 rushing touchdowns and threw another 40 on in the air. So I mean, his seasons, was just stat wise was unbelievable.
yeah, for sure. So yeah, he's actually my number 3 guy. So my number 2 guys, I'm guessing going to be your number 3, and that
Yep.
is Drake May. So
Yep.
Drake May out of North Carolina, um, he's definitely that prototype NFL quarterback, being 6'4", 230. He has a strong arm and pretty good athletic. I would say he has good athleticism for his size too. One of his better traits I think he has is doing a nice job of maintaining accuracy when being pressured. So I like that
Yep.
out of a quarterback. And he also has that mobility to move around in the pocket and pick up yardage with his legs too. So he's my number 2 guy, and number 3 is Jaden Daniels for me.
Yeah, and I think a lot of teams, just like you and I, are going to go back and forth with that. I mean, both of these guys, obviously, Caleb's the clear cut number 1, but these 2 and 3, I think a lot of teams are going to be flopping back and forth because, I mean, Drake May to me is Josh Allen. I know a lot of people said he's Justin Herbert, but to me, he reminds me a lot of Josh Allen. Similar size, he's athletic, like you said. Um, Out of these top 5 quarterbacks that we're going to list, he probably had the least amount of weapons. So the stats that he put up at North Carolina were actually pretty impressive for not having, like a receiver that's probably going to, not be taken in the first 3 rounds.
Yeah. No,
So
he
he's
had that
he's
Tez Walker. He'll probably be more of a round 2 guy.
yeah, Tez. Yep, that's true. Yeah, I mean, he still threw 3,600 yards, 24 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. So nothing crazy, but just watching him, I mean, you can just see that he has all the traits to be a franchise quarterback.
Yeah, for sure. And whoever takes him, I think he's going to be a really solid player. So we'll see if any
Yeah, I
team
think so
moves up
too.
to that number 3 position too to draft one of those guys. If the Patriots do in fact go a veteran quarterback route, and trade back the stockpile some picks. So we'll see maybe some movement here before the draft or at the draft for one of those 2 players.
Yeah, for sure. And Drake May's only 21 years old. So, I mean, he is so young. I mean, a lot of these quarterbacks like Penix and Bo Nix, and I mean, even Jane Daniels, I think is 22 or 23. I think he might be 23.
Think he's going to be turning
So,
20. Yeah, he's going to be turning 24 in this coming December. So he'll have
sure.
pretty
Yep.
much his
Yep.
whole season at 23. But
Yeah, but just getting a guy like Drake May at 21 years old, I mean, that's crazy. Him and JJ are the two youngest, top quarterbacks in the draft. So
Hmm.
that's huge drafting the guy that's that young.
For sure. So who is your number 4 guy?
So we might be a little different on here too. My
Okay.
number 4 is actually Penix,
Okay.
Michael Penix from Washington.
Yep.
He's a little older. He's 23 years old. I think he might be 24 when the season starts. But I did talk, I kind of compared him a little bit to Phillip Rivers, and that's going to be my comparison all the way through. I mean, he just reminds me so much of Phillip Rivers, the left-handed Phillip Rivers. He just the way he moves, his throwing motions, the accuracy, it just reminds me so much of Phillip. And stat-wise, he had the best season out of pretty much all the quarterbacks.
Hmm.
I obviously not Jaden because he won the Heisman, but besides him, I mean, he threw for almost 5,000 yards, 36 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, and he just loves to push the ball down the field. So if you have receivers like a JJ, an Addison, those it would be really hard for me not to take a guy like Penix.
Hmm.
Obviously, you know, his injury concerns are going to play a huge factor in where he gets drafted. He had 4 straight seasons where he had season-ending injuries. Two of them being shoulder injuries and two of them being ACL. So
Hmm.
the fact that he's already had 2 ACL injuries and he's only 23 years old is definitely scary, especially taking him in the first round. But I think, going back to that national championship game, if you just, you know, pretend like that never happened, the game before that, he lit it up and I thought, man, this guy looks like a top 5 pick.
Yeah.
So a lot of people are kind of going back to that national championship game where he laid an egg and they're starting to bring up his injury past a little more. So, he might be a guy that falls to round 2, but I would take him in the first round. I really would. I'm a huge Michael Penix fan.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of him too, and he's actually rated number 5 for me.
Sure,
I'm
sure.
not gonna say who's my number 4 right now, but yeah, if I think you hit the nail right on the head, and that is just how he played versus Texas. If you went back to that after that game, I think everyone was talking about him as being maybe a potential top 15 pick, first round pick, no
Yeah.
matter what. Then in
Yep.
that game, one thing that kind of stood out is when he was pressured, and Michigan had just unrelentless pressure that whole football game. His
Yep.
offensive line just couldn't, they just were getting bullied that whole game. But when he was pressured, he was consistently missing throws down the field that we haven't seen before. So I think that is one knock on him, is how he can maybe develop and progress and when he's being pressured to maybe maintain more in the pocket and maintain the accuracy. But I mean,
Yep.
if you're looking for a deep ball thrower, I think he's the best in the draft. And I'm saying that I think he's has a better deep ball than Caleb Williams.
Yeah, and that really showed with him and Roma Dunze, which he's going to be a top 10 pick most likely.
Yeah, for
But yeah,
sure.
I do agree with that. I mean, if you give Penix time, he's going to absolutely dice you up. And out of the top 5 quarterbacks that we have on our list here, he's definitely the least mobile. He kind of showed that he was a little mobile, before his injuries. But since his 2 ACL injuries, he's kind of just a sit and duck in that pocket.
Yep.
He can move a little bit. He's not a Peyton Manning or
Yeah.
anything in that
Yeah,
pocket. He
for
can move a
sure.
little bit. But I mean, he's not gonna, escape out of the pocket like a Caleb, a Drake May, Jaden, or even like a JJ McCarthy.
Yeah.
So that's also a concern. He's at the next level. He is a strictly a pocket passer.
Yeah, for sure. He's not going to, he needs a lane to take off, and he's not going to like hit a spin move and get off to the right or left and scramble that. He needs that lane to hit and
Absolutely.
just go for it, because he's done that this season. You see that on his tape too. But man, yeah,
Yep.
I don't want to knock his season, because that was one of the most impressive seasons I've seen out of a quarterback in a while. Unless, you're
Yep.
talking about Caleb Williams last season. But
Yeah. Yeah.
man, yeah, I think, I would not be mad if the Vikings decided to take him. If they did take him, though, I would hope we maybe could find a way to move back up into the first round and go a defensive player at 11. But like I
Yep.
said before, if he's your guy, you got to take him, because you just don't know if someone behind you is going to take him.
Yeah, exactly. And maybe a team like Denver kind of loses out on like a JJ McCarthy. Maybe he goes top 10, and then the Broncos just have to sit there at 12 and and take a guy like Penix. So we'll see what happens, but that's the thing. Like if you love Penix, you take him at 11. If you're kind of wishy-washy on him and you want to trade back in the first round to take him, maybe you shouldn't take him at all because
Yeah.
he doesn't. He's not a for sure. He's not for surely your guy going forward.
Yeah, for sure. And I think he's probably going to be more of that. Maybe I don't think you bring him in and let him sit a year. I think he's
No,
going
I
to be
don't think so
playing
either.
right away.
Yeah, I think
So
so too. Especially with him, he's gonna be 24, so I think he'll play as a rookie for sure.
yeah. Well, the Vikes do move on from Kirk, and they're somehow not able to get my number 4 player, and that is JJ McCarthy. I definitely think Penix could be an option for us.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Let's hear what you have to say about JJ.
Yeah, so if you were to listen back on episode 4, we did our mock draft, and I mocked JJ at number 11, which I thought at the time was pretty high for him. And now this past week, the narrative has kind of switched even more, and I'm seeing him taken more in the top 10 even before the Vikings. So he might not
Yeah, for
even be
sure.
there now at that 11th pick. His stock is kind of really rising now in this draft process. So, obviously mocks, we know that they are not always accurate. And obviously, if at the end of the draft, we look back at mocks and, most guys aren't taken, they're supposed to be taken. Some people can do a nice job of hitting on the picks. But, I just really love his age. He's a young kid. He he's 6'3". He's 202 pounds, so you can maybe add a little more weight on his frame. But he definitely has some traits that I like. Athleticism. He's got an arm talent. He's got an ability to throw on the run. One thing he needs to continue to work on, and maybe a coach like KOC or somewhere else can kind of develop him as being more consistent and kind of unlocking that with him. But he's definitely a guy I don't think he's going to go in and start year one. He needs to sit and develop. I think if you rush him, it's not going to work. I think he's going to end up failing. So he definitely needs to sit and develop, get a bridge quarterback. And then hopefully in of his in year two of his rookie contract, he's ready to roll in on the team that he's on.
Yeah, and you hit it right on the head. You like if you take JJ, you have to do exactly what the Packers have done with all their quarterbacks. You have to let him sit and at least sit for a year or two. I mean, I just don't think that he's ready. It could be a lot like the Zach Wilson situation. You play him, he's just not ready. He's too young. I mean, I just if you have a veteran quarterback and you go out there and get a guy like a Ryan Tannehill or a Minshew, like we talked about, then it's a
Mhm.
great situation. You can sit and learn. And even if he sits and learns for half a season, I think that would be a lot better than just going out there and playing him as a rookie. Um, he only threw for 300 yards once this past season.
Yeah.
Obviously, the Michigan would run heavy. They would run the ball, 40 plus times, usually almost every game. And he's a guy that you really have to go back and watch the tape on him and kind of break him down that way. Because when I was watching the games live, I'm thinking, man, there's no way that this guy's a first round pick. There's no way.
Yeah,
But if
for
you go
sure.
back and you break down play by play and you kind of
Yep.
see the arm talent that he has and just the rawness of him, you're like,
Yeah.
okay, maybe there's something there, maybe there's
Yep.
something there. And then Jim Harbaugh comes out and says like, he's the best quarterback since Andrew Luck and he thinks he should be the number one. So I think teams kind of buy into that a little bit too. But
Yeah.
I mean, going back and talking about Penix, I mean, if you look at JJ McCarthy's national championship game, he only threw for 140 yards and only completed on 55% of his passes. So he
Mhm.
laid an egg in the national championship too. He just had a great defense and a good enough running game to get that W.
Yeah, for sure. And like I've talked to you, I've spoken with or about this with you before in the past, and I was kind of the same boat where I was never really wowed by him watching him
Yep.
play. He never had that moment I was like, wow. But that's because the consistency throughout the game wasn't there.
Yeah,
He definitely
exactly.
going back and looking at some plays, there are some wow plays, but he
Yeah.
just wasn't consistent enough for me at the time to maybe consider him at this point at 11. But now, as I've kind of had some time to digest it a little more and just looking at some of the traits that he does and things that he does well, he could definitely be that perfect quarterback, like we said, to just sit and develop. And he could maybe be a really good quarterback in the NFL.
Yeah, and it's crazy. There's always seems like there's one quarterback after the season's done that just kind of climbs up the boards that teams and the media kind of fall in love with. I mean, I even saw on Twitter or X that people are comparing him to Joe Burrow. I'm
Okay.
just like, man,
Wow.
that's a little steep to me. Like if I had to put a comparison on him, I kind of thought about this a little bit. He kind of reminds me of a little more athletic Baker Mayfield.
Okay.
You know, he kind of like I think JJ has I think he weighs like 205 pounds. So he has a smaller frame,
Yeah.
but the arm talent is probably pretty similar to Baker's. You know, I don't think JJ is going to ever come in the NFL and be a top 5 quarterback. I just don't see it. I mean,
Hmm.
obviously, I've been wrong before. Maybe he'll prove me wrong. I just don't see it. But I think he can be like a Baker Mayfield at the next level. You know,
Okay.
obviously, Baker Mayfield this past year, he played like a top 10 quarterback, and now he's going to get paid probably 30 plus mil, by the Buccaneers or another team. So,
Yeah.
JJ could eventually be that, but I just think that he has to sit, learn a little bit, and then take the training wheels off and just let him rip.
Yeah. One thing I would just say, like, in comparison to Baker Mayfield, um, is his height is a little, he's a little taller than Baker. He's a little more lanky, but um,
Yep.
play wise, yeah, I can see how you're saying that. How you know he might Baker Mayfield has some good traits, but he just same thing. He always struggled with that consistency until this year. And hey, he had some nice weapons in Cleveland, and this year he had some really nice weapons in Tampa too. Obviously, he wasn't in Cleveland last year. He kind of bounced around a couple different teams and end up with the Rams. I know at one point too, but yeah, well, I guess we'll just see what happens. And yeah, I'm excited, man. I'm just excited to see what he can do at the combine. I think that will, kind of tell us a little more too if he goes in there and has a tremendous day that maybe people are going to really see his stock continue to rise up. So,
Yeah, and if he did go to a team like the Vikings, I mean, obviously with those weapons, man, when you have weapons like that, I mean, your learning curve is a lot less. I don't know how to put. I
yeah,
guess I'm not saying that right, but you know what I mean. It's just when you have guys like JJ Addison, TJ Hawkinson, if you go out there and get a good running back, I mean, maybe you can play a lot sooner than I think because those weapons kind of will carry you a lot further than other teams' weapons would.
yeah, just get the ball to those guys and let them go to work.
Yeah, for sure. And another thing, comparing him to Baker, I think he's going to run a lot faster than Baker. I think Baker was like a 4.8 guy. I
Okay.
think JJ, I mean, JJ does have the athleticism, and I
Yeah.
think JJ is going to be like a 4.5 guy. So he'll be pretty quick.
Okay. Who was your fifth player?
JJ was.
Was JJ? Okay.
Yep, it was
Just
JJ.
wanted to
Yep,
make
yep,
sure.
yep. I think the drop off after those 5 guys is pretty significant to me at
Yep.
least.
Yeah, I agree too. I'm not a huge fan of Bo Nix.
I'm not either, not at all.
One guy, I'm just gonna go back to this, and you probably know who I'm about to say right now, and then know that you have kind of given me some slack over the last couple of years for thinking this, but I'm not saying he's gonna be a top or top quarterback in this draft class. But one guy just to keep an eye on is I think Spencer Rattler out of South Carolina. Obviously, he was in Oklahoma. He really struggled there. Caleb Williams came in, took his spot. We know what happened after that. Lincoln Riley left for USC. He took Caleb Williams with him. Caleb Williams wins the Heisman that next year. But man, if you go back to the Senior Bowl, and just before that too, like he's actually been pretty consistent and he has a pretty good arm. And I think he could be a guy that maybe teams would take a shot at just to develop. And you never know. He could develop into a starting quarterback in the NFL, I think.
Yeah, and I mean, I've seen a lot of things on Twitter and X that, people are kind of talking, he's kind of in the boat, same with the Bo Nix, like where Spencer could be like a round 2 or like a day 2 guy, round 2,
Mhm.
round 3, which I mean, in my opinion, blows my mind because I watched a lot of Spencer Rattler games and I'm thinking, dude, there ain't no way this guy can play at the next
Yeah.
level. I mean, obviously he had his freshman year at Oklahoma. I believe
Yeah.
was the COVID year, and he put up good numbers because he was pretty hyped out of high school.
Yeah, I
He
think was
was,
he wasn't the number one quarterback coming out, was he?
he was a 5-star recruit, so, like, he was pretty hyped,
Yeah.
and but just the last couple years, I mean, he likes to throw his interceptions. I
Yeah.
don't know if he's ever thrown for more than, like, 3,500 yards in a season, so
Okay.
we'll see. I mean,
Yeah.
I know he's got a smaller frame too. I think he's, like, 6 foot, 200 pounds or 6 foot,
Mhm.
205. So, he's kind of a smaller quarterback too, but it's
Yeah.
always those guys that just kinda randomly climb up the board, and
Yeah.
honestly, would not surprise me one bit if he was a day 2 guy. It
Yeah.
honestly wouldn't.
Well, we've seen it in the past, I'm not comparing him to this player, but when Dak Prescott came out of the draft or came into the draft, I don't think a lot of teams thought or people thought he was going to be as good as he is right now. So I definitely think, teams are going to like some of those traits. Like I said, he's got a pretty good arm and he has the mobility in the pocket. So that's two things that you can work with. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, for sure, and I think overall the top end of the quarterback class is very strong, with the top 5 guys that we named, but after that, I mean, maybe a team likes Spencer more than Bolt. So
Yeah.
we'll see what happens, but I think the drop off after these top guys or top 5 guys is very significant and would not surprise me one bit if a team went out there and drafted Spencer day 2 and let him sit for a couple years and, maybe in the preseason he impresses and eventually takes over a starting gig.
Yeah, for sure. Which quarterback class do you like better, this year or last year?
Ooh, God, I'm gonna say this year.
Okay.
I think especially those top 3 quarterbacks with Drake May, Jaden Daniels, Caleb Williams.
Mhm.
Um, I just think all you can't go wrong with any 3 of those guys.
Yep.
In my opinion, I think it's very hard. I just don't see Caleb being a bust. I don't. I don't know how. Even if he just sat in the pocket and passed, I think he's an elite guy inside the pocket and outside the pocket. Jane Daniels' athleticism is going to carry him just as far as, anyone in this draft class. And then
Mhm.
Drake May, when it's all said and done, 5 to 8 years from now, he might end up being the best quarterback out of this entire class.
Yeah,
So
he
I
really could
really,
be.
really love this draft class. But how about you?
You know what? I go back and, man, last year's class was pretty impressive. We've seen Richardson, what he did before he got injured. He was looking like a potential rookie of the year candidate. And then Stroud, I think he's going to be a superstar quarterback for years and years to come. Obviously,
Yep.
Bryce Young, we don't know what's going to happen with him. The Panthers had a pretty bad roster overall, and we'll see if he can maybe take a step in year 2. When I was watching him, he threw a lot of balls to the sideline, and they're just high all the time.
Yeah.
Like,
Yep.
just very hesitant. I think kind of playing a little scared too back there. But before I'm going to ask you this, before I say if I like this class better or not, I wanted to ask you, do you think this class is probably the best class in the last 5 years? If we go back, I think it was the 20. So we had 2022 last year, or 2023 last year. 2022, that was Pickett, right?
Yep. Correct.
Okay, what was 2021? That was like, trying to think. Was that Fields and those
2021.
guys?
Yeah. 2021 was Trevor Lawrence and those guys.
Okay. And then, so do you think this class is even better than that class?
God, that's a great question. I really liked Trevor Lawrence coming out. And even guys like Trey Lance, I like Trey Lance. And then Justin Fields. I mean, Justin Fields is still right now my favorite player in the entire NFL.
Hmm.
But Trevor Lawrence was so hyped up. But I still think that Caleb Williams is a better prospect than Trevor Lawrence was.
Yeah.
So I would say yes, I think this is the best draft class quarterback wise that we've seen in at least 5 years.
Yep. I agree. That's my
Yeah.
answer too. So
Yep.
I think this is a special class. And I think this class is better than next year too, by the way. I
I
like
do too,
next
for
year's
sure.
class,
Yes.
and I think we're
Yes.
gonna see some guys rise up. But man, this class right now is looking very, very special. And like I
Yep.
said before in previous episodes, I think this could be a historic quarterback class.
Yeah, I think, 5 to 8 years from now, we're going to look back to this class and we're not going to believe that, all these quarterbacks were all in the same draft. And we're going to see, we could see 5 quarterbacks go in the first round this year. And I think all 5 quarterbacks have the potential to be all pro level quarterbacks. I really honestly believe that.
Yeah, for sure. Well, moving on to our next topic, man, this next topic just makes me like a little kid on Christmas morning, man, because I am so pumped and I'm so excited about this next topic.
Yes, me too. NCAA football is back
Let's
this summer.
go.
This summer, let's go, dude. It's been 10 years. We've been waiting 10 years for this, man. And going back is, going back to my childhood, every year I would get NCAA in July, and then you get Madden in August. And I would always play the college games more than I would play Madden. And I would play Madden, I would put so many hours into Madden, but I would always go back to NCAA. I'm so happy that we're finally getting it back. And obviously, there's been a lot of rumors of is it actually happening? Well, EA Sports just dropped a little trailer about a week ago, and they finally confirmed that we'll get more details here in May. But dude, it's finally back.
It's been a long time coming, man. And I'm pumped. So, no more of this going back to 2024 or the 2014 NCAA football and having to play on my Xbox 360. So, I'm just,
I
yeah,
know
like I
you do
said,
that every year too.
I do. Man, I
Uh,
feel I'm happy for those people that put out those rosters for the current year every year. Now they don't have to worry about that. But man, yeah,
yep,
I'm just so excited. I can't wait. I hope it lives up to the hype. I think no matter what, I think the dynasty mode is going to be fantastic. I can't wait to just dive into it and take my Golden Gophers to multiple back-to-back national championships. So
dude,
we'll
for
see what
sure.
happens. But
And all the rumors going around, they're saying that college day game day is going to be in there. They said
yeah,
that the player likenesses is going to be in the game, so we should get like Shador Sanders, Travis Hunter, all those top guys, Oliver Gordon from Oklahoma State, all those guys should be
hmm
in the game. No, I highly doubt they're going to be face scanned, but I mean, come
yeah,
on, beggars can't be choosers here.
yeah,
We're finally getting the
exactly.
game back. And another big thing for me is they announced a bunch of FCS teams will be in the game, which even going back to the 360 days, we didn't have that. We haven't had that since the PS2 days. And I always
hmm
like to pick the absolute worst team in the game. I mean, it was kind of funny because they would have like a couple bleachers on each side of the field, and you'd play in front of like 50 people, and
Yeah,
you try to turn them into just a powerhouse, trying to get the number one recruit in the nation and stuff. So the fact that that's going to be in the game, plus obviously I think Madden is one of the better looking sports games out there right now. So if the college football game kind of just looks like Madden, I mean, dude, we're in for a treat.
I'm hoping with the FCS schools that you can take them over and try to make them or try to take the jump to the FBS and build them up that way.
Yes,
Because man, I'm really hoping
yes,
like North Dakota State, South Dakota State, the Grizz, Montana Grizz, those
Montana
three
Grizz.
teams
Yep,
are in it,
yep.
man. Because I think I work with a coworker actually at work. He's from Montana. He's a big Grizz fan. So shout out to you if you're listening. But man, he went to a game last year, and that field they have there is gorgeous with the mountains. Probably one of the
Yes.
best spectacle or football stadiums I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny that you brought that up because I didn't even know Montana had a football team. But kind of switching topics here, Sean O'Malley, the UFC bantamweight champion in the world, I follow him closely, and he's from Montana. And this past football season, he shot a little vlog of him going back to Montana, going in the locker room. You're able to see the field and stuff. And dude, you're 100% right. That is the most beautiful backdrop of a football field that you'll ever see. It's just
Yeah.
gorgeous.
Yeah, big sky country, man. It'd be fun to go out there for a game, that's for sure.
Dude, for sure. So yeah, I just can't believe that we're actually getting college football in a handful of months. So if you're a video game fan and a football fan, you guys definitely have to pick it up because it's gonna be awesome.
Yep, for sure. I think what is it supposed to be dropping maybe in July?
Yeah, yep. All the rumors are July. It sounds like a big reveal is gonna come out in May, and I'm assuming the cover athlete and all that good stuff will be revealed in May too. So, but real quick, who's your guess for cover athlete?
Oh man. I go back between a player and a coach, and I'm gonna say a coach, and I say this because he's a legendary coach, and that's Nick Saban. Retired this year.
Okay,
I
yep.
think he's gonna be a guy on the cover. That's just my prediction. How about you?
Yeah, I'm gonna go with the coach too, and I'm actually hoping this is who it's gonna be, but I'm hoping Deion Sanders. I'm really high in the Colorado. I'm definitely on the bandwagon there. But if you put Deion Sanders prime time on the cover of NCAA football, dude, I might have to
Dude,
take
that'd be
time
so
off work
sick.
because I'm gonna spend so much time on that game. If they have Deion Sanders scanned on the sideline, dude, I don't know if I'll pick another team. I might just have to roll with Colorado all the way through.
Yeah. I'm guessing you can do multiple teams and
Yeah,
definitely
yep,
the
you should be able
Ghost
to.
and definitely Colorado. So, but yeah, man,
Dude,
that'll
for
be
sure.
awesome. And just to add a little thing in there, Zach, I don't have to worry about taking that time off from the work. So that's kind of built into
Dude,
my
I
schedule.
I
Being
know,
a
dude. You are
teacher,
a lucky
so
dog. You are a lucky dog.
but
I might just have to quit my job, dude. Live in your basement.
well, saying that though, it'll be a busy summer for me though. Just to kind of tie in the name of our podcast here, Nap Time Sports.
Yeah.
So Zach and I are both dads. I have a 4-month-old daughter, and Zach has a son. Zach, how old is Z now? Is he
He'll
three,
be
four?
4. Yep, he'll be 4 in May. So he's almost 4.
Okay.
Yep.
And you have another one on the way.
I do, and it's kind of funny because the due date of the new one is May. The due date's actually a couple days after my son's birthday, so that'll be interesting to say the least. I'm kind of hoping that they're not born on the same day, but we're definitely cutting it close.
Yeah. So Zach, I think this would be the perfect time to share your story about your son. I thought it was very hysterical. Maybe you can just give a little background knowledge first of what's going on with your man cave.
Yeah, so in my man cave, I have so back in the day they used to make little football figures. They're about 6 inches. They're called McFarlane football figures. And I have probably 200 to 250 plus of these figures all over the man cave. I'm talking on the walls, on entertainment centers all over the place. And my son, I only have one Chiefs player out of 200 plus figures. I only have one Chiefs player, and that Chiefs player is Priest Holmes. He's the only Chiefs player in franchise history that gets a pass from me. I loved Priest Holmes. Early 2000s, he was my favorite running back, and he's the only Chiefs player I have in my man cave. And my son, I always try to say what's our favorite team. I always try to have him, say Raiders, but he always says red team, and he points to the Chiefs player. And to this day, dude, he says it. Like, even when the Super Bowl
Oh,
is on, I'm like, who are you cheering for? And I'm trying to get him to say Raiders. Obviously, the Raiders weren't playing, but I'm still trying to get him to say Raiders. And he always says red team, and he points to the Chiefs guy.
oh
So,
no.
so now my son sleeps in the cold garage until he changes his mind. But no, just kidding. But yeah, I don't know what we're gonna have to do, but as of right now, his favorite team is the Chiefs. So that makes me very, very ill. But yeah, dude, it's not good. I don't know what I'm gonna do, but something's gotta change.
Well, hopefully, if he doesn't like the Raiders, I bet he'll like the Raiders growing up. But man, hopefully he
Yeah.
can be a little Viking fan too, because that'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean he could like any other team. I mean, I don't care if he likes the Broncos, the Chargers, the Packers, but just don't like the Chiefs. We can't like the
Yeah,
Chiefs in our household. So the
yeah,
fact
for
that his
sure.
favorite team right now, he's only 3, but yeah, his favorite team right now is the red team, the Chiefs. So yeah, not good.
It's definitely a popular team amongst the kids, so that is for
Absolutely.
certain. But well, yeah, thank you everyone. If you got to this point of the show, thank you for listening and supporting us. We're really enjoying doing our podcast, and we hope you're enjoying too.
Yeah, thanks again if you guys listen to this point. And don't forget to hit those bell icons and get notified when new episodes drop. Go Raiders.
Skull Vikes. Thank you for listening to our episode. Be sure to give us a follow on Instagram and X at Naptime Sports Talk Podcast for content related to the pod. Thank you for the support.